Yesterday's labor market figures were really not good. Bitcoin initially reacted positively to this, even though there really isn't any reason to see it as positive. That's why we dropped a bit again last night. Oil prices continue to fall, although it's worth mentioning that there was a slight uptick last night. Why, how, and for what reason? Let's take a closer look at that in today's video. There was some news again as well. Otherwise, today, Wednesday, could be a bit quieter. We'll take a look at all of this. So first of all, welcome to a new crypto update video. Yes, Bitcoin is trading at 86,800 US dollars. We have the Asia range, which you can see quite well here, the blue line. Yesterday, I also marked the golden pocket here again. Yes, it was actually tested perfectly. We were initially rejected there. Still, there's a bit of hope, so I can give you a little bit of hope. You'll definitely find out what that is in today's update video. Of course, we'll also take a look at all the news that's coming up. We'll also look back at yesterday, what happened, and so on. But before we get started, as always, feel free to leave a like on the video. If you haven't done so yet, subscribe to the channel. And of course, feel free to join the free Telegram talk and signal group. If you're interested in updates, news, and signals, feel free to join. You'll find the link for that for free down in the video description. And if I do anything with my trades, you'll definitely hear about it there first. And if you're still looking for an exchange where you can copy all the trades we discuss here, whether it's crypto, stocks, forex, or anything else, you can also do that with my partner, exchange BingX. At the moment, you can secure up to 11,500 USDT in bonuses. Also, the XMAS voyage is still running, or however you pronounce it. It's a cool promotion where with just a few $1,000s in trading volume, you can roll the dice each day. And with that, you can secure free trades or other rewards. So feel free to check it out, link below. In the video description. All right, and I'd say let's not waste any time because we have a lot to talk about. So Bitcoin at 86,800 US dollars. Yeah, yesterday there was a brief recovery. That was, of course, also because the economic data was initially misinterpreted, or rather, what does misinterpreted even mean? Was it interpreted? You also have to say we had reasonably good data. So average hourly wages have increased, as has non-farm employment. Actually, that has also increased, so everything fits, but the unemployment rate was terrible. Up until 2 days ago, it was still estimated 4.4%. Then yesterday, it was estimated at 4.5%, and what actually came out was 4.6%. Then, strangely enough, there was 1 minute before we got the data. I'd like to quickly show you this again because I found it a bit odd myself. There were the old non-farm payrolls, which turned out terribly, so minus 105,000. With the non-farm payrolls, that was not what we ultimately wanted. And in the end, that's also what led to the markets going up and down so much. At the same time, the Purchasing Managers Index was released, meaning that services and industry also came in well below expectations. So right away, people started shouting, hey, cool. That, of course, also means for Bitcoin that interest rates will be lowered. Everything's cool after all. We want low interest rates. Yeah, the game isn't that simple because the FedWatch tool hasn't changed at all. If only it were that easy, that would be great. And at the same time, let's also take a look at US oil, or rather the oil price. Let's put that into perspective as well. Because yesterday it really took a hit. And no, that's not because inflation is suddenly going to get a lot cheaper. That's simply because there's no more demand. China is completely weakening. The housing market in China is miserable. The US is also weakening. We're seeing more and more unemployed people, etc., and so on. We could go on about this forever. And as long as there's no demand, oil prices will just keep falling. And of course, that also has effects, or could be a hint at a possible recession that might be coming. At the same time, Bitcoin was sold off again last night. Let's quickly switch to the 1 hour time frame. There we can see that we were rejected at the golden pocket yesterday, and that 50% of the small vector candle was taken out. So none of this is really looking good. The only positive thing I can give you today is that there are no news releases today, which means the day should be relatively quiet, except for Trump. I just wanted to quickly show you that as well. Unless Trump suddenly gets the idea to do something with Venezuela again, since he apparently wants to sanction the seized oil tankers there as well. No idea what he's up to this time, but in any case, it pushed the oil price up a bit and also created a bit more pressure in the crypto sector. Still, as I said, to give you a bit of hope, if we set the FIB from our low to our high, earlier we had a perfect retest of the golden pocket here. In this area, that could push us further up, at least for today. Tomorrow we'll get the inflation data, so this week is absolutely packed with news, and every day there's something new, but at least that gives us a bit of hope. Something else that gives us a little hope, I also wanted to show you this, is the high block, basically the heat map. To the downside, we still have this cluster at 83,000 US dollars. I also don't think that's really going away, but on the positive side, more and more orders are coming into the upside. There are more and more orders accumulating between 93,000 and 95,000 US dollars. And that's kind of the hint I could imagine. For this week, maybe today, if things are a bit quieter, we might see a slight move to the upside. But then tomorrow, if the whole story with the inflation data turns out to be really negative, plus, of course, like there's also the issue with the Bank of Japan on Friday, which is raising interest rates. And of course, there's still the yen carry trade, which is still unwinding. So as you can see, there's a lot going on that could in turn also have an impact on Bitcoin. And we might still test this area around 84, 83 degrees before we really enter a quiet phase towards the end of the year or move into the new year. So for now, that's my plan. Of course, what's also negative is that we've been rejected at the Asia range. Not really great. So in the end, the analysis was spot on since we were rejected right here. Now, as we move down, we'll have to see how today plays out. So I think that was a rough overview for now. The overview. With that, you're prepared for today. I'm still short. I don't have any long positions open. Let's see what happens. So let's move over to Ethereum. Ethereum is pretty much dead too. I mean, the market is, I don't know. Before I forget, by the way, the funding rates for Bitcoin are positive. That's unbelievable. I actually wanted to talk about this in regard to Ethereum. Ethereum, yeah, pretty mixed, but it's not really the best either, something like that. I don't like it either, but we still have this huge inefficiency to the upside. So at some point, there really needs to be some kind of breakout from this trend channel. Otherwise, the volume is just dead. Nothing is really happening at the moment. But maybe today, with the way things are going, we might finally get some positive outlooks to the upside, that the market pushes upward. That would be the first step in the right direction. Otherwise, as I just showed you, the funding rates, they don't look so great. Yeah, moving on to Solana. Solana actually had a nice upward trend yesterday, at least on the smaller time frames. Let's take a quick look at this as well. Let's check out the funding rates for that. Yeah, what can I say about it? It's in the positive. I already spoiled it earlier, so that's why the reaction now, but I don't get it. Honestly, I can't remember a market phase like this where as soon as we drop a little, it feels like everyone goes long again. Just yesterday or the day before, we saw again 400 million, 500 million in longs got flushed out with just a small move. And for example, Solana as well. It crashes here if we go from the top down almost 9%. And the first idea is immediately again. Long, 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 long. The funding rates were negative for 8 hours and immediately turned positive again. So Solana is also completely uninteresting to me. I would even rather long Ethereum than long Solana because the market is just complete bullshit right now. I really like it. 0-0. If I were you and you really want to go long, I would probably go long on Ethereum or Bitcoin. But please leave the rest alone and wait until tomorrow, as I said. Inflation data, and on Friday, Japan as well. Once the data is out, maybe there will be some normal setups again. Otherwise, let's move on to the traditional markets now. I've just shown you over there already USD, JPY. Of course, the dollar has risen a bit also with the whole situation again now. Yeah, with the USA and Venezuela. Of course, that puts a bit of pressure on Japanese government bonds. It's, oh God, oh God, oh God, 1.978% again. We're currently struggling here with a new all-time high in bonds for the last, or rather for the 10-year bonds. It's incredible. And also the 20-year and 30-year bonds. And then take a look at the US treasuries. Oh, they're rising too. That's nice, isn't it? The storm is brewing, friends. That's not great. But well, it's all bullish. All bullish. At least the euro has now reached the wave 3 target. So our minimum target was here. Wave 3 target. Wave 3 target. We'll have to see whether the momentum is already fading here or if this is just a small consolidation. I actually suspect it's more of a minor consolidation compared to Friday. If the Bank of Japan raises rates, the dollar should drop all the way down again. That could lead to us definitely reaching our 1.20 target for the euro. Otherwise, gold. Yeah, it's pumping uncertainty, of course, just like silver hitting a new all-time high. So if you're shorting that, hey, respect, guys, you're really daring. I wouldn't do it. The transnational markets, DAX is stable. Dow Jones flipped down after the all-time high. NASDAQ, yesterday there was news again. Amazon, or I don't know if it was yesterday or last night, Amazon wants to invest in OpenAI. Hey, cool, the gears are turning again, so the cycle continues. OpenAI. They invest there, then invest here again, and we in turn invest in NVIDIA. I don't know what to make of it. The S&P 500 did not trigger our short position by, how much was it exactly? 0.63%. Yeah, it was a bit more than I thought, but all right. In the end, it was 50 points. Let's see if we can get back up there. Time is definitely running out, and that's my problem right now. But all right, we have the Bitcoin short open. We're well hedged. And as I said, the USD JPY short longs are just a bit too risky for me at the moment to force it no matter what. I also wanted to show you the volatility index. It's relatively stable, but it does look a bit bottomed out. So every time we've entered this blue, you know it, this blue zone, there have always been slight increases afterwards. We'll have to keep an eye on that. At the moment, I'm still skeptical because of the CPI data tomorrow, especially since the unemployment numbers were already so terrible. So why shouldn't the inflation data also be terrible? And that's the big problem. You might remember Powell's speech last week. They're in a bind because on the one hand, the labor market data suggests that interest rates should keep going down. The problem is no fake news here. The problem is the inflation data. If those keep rising due to tariffs or some other special circumstances, then the US has a problem, and it's a big, big problem. That's why I'd be a bit cautious about always blaming everything on things like the Fed rate cut and saying, well, come, we're going to the moon, and so on. Try to look at it a bit from the Fed's perspective and consider the background behind it, or just think a few months ahead about what kind of consequences that could have. And as long as the inflation data hasn't been released yet, there's no moon happening. If the numbers are okay tomorrow, then we can talk about rate cuts again, and that could have an impact. The problem is, what do rate cuts actually mean? Rate cuts also mean for everyone, yeah, crap, the economy isn't doing well. If the economy isn't doing well, why should people invest money in crypto? Think about that too. Otherwise, that's it from my side for now. We'll definitely hear from each other again tomorrow with an update video. Also, later there will be another video on smart crypto. So that's it from me. As always, thank you very much for watching. Leave a like, subscribe, and yeah, I'd say we'll hear from each other again tomorrow. Until then, I wish you a nice and successful day. Ciao, ciao, and as always, stay crypto.